I just had a 12-year-old boy show up here at my front door asking for help. His ankles are taped up, and he won't tell us why.
Okay.
But he has duct taped around each ankle. Yeah, there's sores around them. I think he needs... This kid has obviously been... I think he's been detained. He's obviously covered in wounds.
Jodi, I need you to step out.
I have my attorney.
That's great. Step out of the house.
No, I'm not going to step out of the
Step
house.
out of the house.
Step out of the house.
Whoa.
We're just going to see if anybody else. Is there anybody else home?
Wait a minute, how do you come to my house?
Right there.
By the summer of 2023, Ruby and Kevin Franke had 6 beautiful children, fulfilling careers, and more money than many of us will see in our lifetimes. In many respects, the Frankes were the quintessential Mormon family. However, their carefully crafted facade crumbled in an epic fashion when Ruby's glaring hypocrisy and the horrific crimes she committed against her own children were dragged into the public spotlight for all to see.
I think all of us could get on board with, yeah, I have righteous anger toward adults abusing children.
That said, Ruby made the meteoric fall from grace even worse by claiming that her motives were pure and that her actions were guided by a divine hand. Before we begin, we would like to send our sincere condolences to those who fell victim to the abominable acts described in this case. Kevin Franke was born in Utah on October the 9th, 1978. His future wife, Ruby Griffiths, was also born in Utah, but she was born a few years later on January 18th of 1982. Ruby and Kevin were both raised in traditional Mormon homes, and the teachings and doctrines of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints played significant roles in their upbringings. They both had relatively happy and uneventful childhoods, but the first time they met was at a Utah State University mixer shortly after Ruby graduated from high school. At the time, she was getting ready to attend Utah State, where Kevin was already a student in the university's civil engineering program. Kevin was a handsome and confident young man, and slim, blonde, and bubbly Ruby was just his type. Kevin walked up to her that evening and struck up a conversation, and to his surprise, she told him she'd always wanted to marry an engineer. She may have been nervous and just doing her best to make awkward small talk, but there was an undeniable chemistry between them. Later, Kevin watched her talk to and flirt with other young men, but he wasn't one to be deterred by a little bit of friendly competition. The following week, he and Ruby went on their first official date. In addition to their mutual attraction, they discovered that they shared many of the same interests and values, and as luck would have it, they both wanted to have a big family someday. Just 2 weeks later, Ruby called her mother to tell her she was engaged. She and Kevin met each other's families shortly thereafter, and before long, the smitten couple tied the knot. Ruby continued studying accounting at Utah State, but she ultimately dropped out because starting a family was a much bigger priority. On March 3, 2003, she gave birth to their first child, Shari, and a year later, Kevin graduated magna cum laude with a degree in civil engineering. The Frankes experienced a few heartbreaking miscarriages in the subsequent years, but they welcomed a new child into the world every odd year between 2005 and 2013. Eventually, they had 4 girls, Shari, Abby, Julie, and Eve, and 2 boys, Chad and Russell. Kevin eventually earned his master's degree from the University of Washington and his Ph.D. from Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah, about 45 miles south of Salt Lake City. After graduating, he became an assistant professor of civil engineering at BYU. Then, in 2015, Ruby created a YouTube channel called 8 Passengers that would define their lives for years to come. The idea was amazingly simple. Ruby would document the everyday lives of a traditional Mormon family. She thought making family videos would be fun and that her children would learn valuable skills and even perhaps a few poignant life lessons along the way. Ruby also hoped the channel would eventually take off and generate enough revenue to supplement Kevin's relatively modest professor's salary. Ironically, one early video was titled, "Kids, Take Me to Jail." In the opening segment, two of Ruby and Kevin's girls are in the kitchen fixing snacks. Later, Ruby and some of the children piled into the car and drove to the grocery store. Then, after returning home, the kids ran around the front yard and eventually handcuffed their mother while she was lying face down on the driveway. In many respects, Kids Take Me to Jail was a typical 8 Passengers video in that it was quirky, entertaining, and uplifting. In another video, Kevin Franke notices that his son Chad is sending a text message under the table during a family meal.
Chad, what are you doing over there? No texting at the dinner table. No texting.
Let me see it. Let me see it.
I see it.
We should clarify that in our house, all our kids know that cell phones are free game for parents, so we can monitor safety.
Yeah, no kid ever said, "Yay, I'm so glad my parents read my text messages." Said no.
What is this? I really like you. Hold on.
I did not say that.
How do you work this stupid phone?
Since texting at dinner time was a big no-no, Kevin asked Chad to hand over his phone. When Chad complied, Kevin discovered that he had messaged a girl that he apparently had a crush on. It's unclear if or how Ruby and Kevin dealt with that particular infraction, but some subsequent videos actually focused on the repercussions associated with breaking family rules. Ruby always suspected that the channel would resonate with traditional Mormons and other conservative families across the country. However, it eventually became more successful than she ever imagined, and just 5 years later, 8 Passengers had more than 2.4 million subscribers. With almost 100 videos that collectively racked up about 1 billion views, Ruby was raking in approximately $1 million a year, according to some sources. At least on the surface, the Frankes were a picture-perfect Mormon family. Behind the scenes, though, Kevin and Ruby's marriage and their relationships with their children were strained to the breaking point. The truth was that Kevin and Ruby had grown apart, and somewhere along the line, Kevin apparently had become addicted to pornography. Then, in 2020, the YouTube channel was rocked by controversy. Many previously loyal viewers were less than thrilled with the surprisingly harsh punishments Ruby regularly doled out for what appeared to be relatively minor rule infractions. In one video, she told viewers that her daughter forgot to take her lunch to school, and when the teacher called to ask her to bring her something to eat, she refused. As callous as it may have seemed, Ruby defended herself on the grounds that the experience would teach her daughter a valuable lesson. After all, she said that her daughter was responsible for preparing her own lunch and making sure that she took it with her to school. She went on to say that it wasn't a huge deal because her daughter was given food the minute she got home that afternoon. In another video, Ruby's teenage son Chad revealed that he had been forced to sleep on a beanbag chair for 7 months.
I don't think our viewers know that.
You've been sleeping on a beanbag.
I've been sleeping on a beanbag since October, and they gave my room back like 2 weeks ago. Oh, I'll give you the reason why I lost my bedroom. I think so. I think this is the reason. At least this is the reason that's been in my head. It's pretty funny, but now that I look back, I mean, it's pretty depressing.
No, we never told our viewers.
That I woke Russell up at 2 in the morning and told him that we're going to Disneyland and he has to pack. And he got up and made his bed all neatly and then packed all his clothes in a suitcase. And then he walked out the door and I'm like, Russell, he was like, what? And he's all happy. Has his sunglasses on.
In this case, the punishment was partly due to a harmless prank he had pulled on his brother the previous October. To be fair, there were apparently more serious incidents between the two boys in the previous months. Even so, the punishment drew unwanted attention from disgruntled viewers. But again, Ruby defended her actions. She said that Chad's therapist recommended that he be removed from the room for the younger boy's sake. Ruby acted on the advice, but she claimed that Chad chose to sleep in the beanbag chair even though he had been given the option of using a blow-up mattress instead. After the incident, Ruby apparently received at least one death threat, and she also got an unexpected visit from Utah's Child Protective Services. The visit did not result in any punishment or corrective action, but the clamor eventually became so overwhelming that a Change.org campaign was launched against Ruby and the 8 Passengers channel. The complaint listed a number of instances where Ruby's videos contained glaring examples of neglect and abuse. Ruby initially thought she might be able to brush the whole thing off, but she was shocked by the number of people who actually signed the petition. Unsurprisingly, the subscribers and casual viewers left the channel in droves, and shortly thereafter, YouTube launched its own investigation. Ruby always maintained that the incidents were taken out of context, but YouTube eventually shut down the channel for a number of violations to its terms of service agreement. This was a huge blow both emotionally and economically, and things were about to go from bad to worse. In early 2022, Ruby asked Kevin to move out of the family home and to refrain from contacting their children until he dealt with his addiction to pornography. Now, with a fractured marriage, a defunct million-dollar business, and a house full of strong-willed and sometimes rowdy children, Ruby turned to a trusted friend and spiritual advisor, Jodi Hildebrandt, for support. In the summer of 2022, she helped Jodi create a YouTube channel to complement the online counseling company called Connections she founded years before. It's unclear whether Ruby knew about it, but Jodi had apparently been placed on probation in 2012 after disclosing confidential information to Mormon elders without her patient's consent. Whatever the case, Ruby was having a hard time managing the household on her own, and she and her kids lived with Jodi for at least some time. Ruby began working as a virtual mental health coach once the YouTube channel was up and running, but almost immediately she and Jodi were accused of making offensive comments about homosexuals and people with disabilities. Some outspoken critics even claimed that Connections was more of a religious cult than a bona fide counseling service. By then, Ruby must have thought that she would always be plagued by controversy and that things couldn't possibly get any worse. And then, they did. On August the 30th of 2023, an unstoppable series of events was set in motion when Jodi's injured and emaciated son climbed through one of Jodi Hildebrandt's windows and ran to a neighbor's house. Moments later, he was caught by a security camera ringing a doorbell. The boy was wearing socks, shorts, or perhaps underwear, but he wasn't wearing any shoes. He was also very thin, and there appeared to be scabs or bloody patches on the exposed portions of his legs. He knocked on the door when no one responded to the doorbell, but a few minutes later he left. A few minutes after that, he was once again caught by a security camera ringing the bell of another neighbor's home. This time, an elderly man appeared about 30 seconds later.
Yes.
Hi, I was just wondering if you could do 2 favors.
Well, what are they?
Taking me to the nearest police station. Well, actually, just one's fine.
What's going on, son? Have a seat there.
It's personal business.
Have a seat. What's your name? How'd you get here?
Then a woman, probably the man's wife, appeared with snacks and water because the boy was thin to the point of malnourishment.
He's hungry and he's a young man. He's carrying his stocking feet. So he escaped.
We need the police here now.
Well, no, I just had a 12-year-old boy show up here at my front door asking for help. And he says he just came from a neighbor's house and he's emaciated, he's got tape around his legs, he's hungry and he's thirsty.
Need someone immediately.
And after a few minutes, the man called 911 and described the situation to the operator. The audio and video ended abruptly, but later an ambulance arrived and paramedics put the boy on a gurney.
Did you get the ropes on you? Who did them? You're not in trouble with me, okay? We're just trying to figure out what's going on. Our main focus right now is you, okay? Who put the ropes on you? Supposed to help you what?
However, only his blue long-sleeve shirt was visible because authorities blurred everything else out before releasing the footage to the public. This was done to protect his identity and because his wounds were so gruesome, and the boy was obviously tense and uncomfortable when the officer asked how he got the injuries. When the boy didn't answer, the officer assured him that he wasn't in any kind of trouble and that they were just trying to figure out what was going on. The boy eventually spoke, but again, his response was bleeped out. But later, he told officers that the injuries were from being tied to the ground with a rope, that a mixture of honey and cayenne pepper had been applied to his open wounds, and that his sister was still inside Jodi Hildebrandt's home. Shortly thereafter, officers were knocking on Jodi's front door and telling her to come out in an authoritative, no-nonsense voice.
Jodi, I need you to step out.
I have my turn.
That's great. Step out of the house.
No, I'm not going to step out of the
Step
house.
out of the house.
Step out of the house.
Whoa.
We're just going to see if anybody else. Is there anybody else home?
Wait a minute, how do you come in my house?
Right there.
They go into my house.
Just have a seat right there.
Do you have a search warrant?
Have a seat right there.
Do you have a search warrant?
Have a seat right there.
Jodi eventually opened the door, but she was talking to her attorney on her cell phone and refused to come out. When it became apparent that she was not going to comply with their request, one officer stepped inside the home.
And I will explain it after this, after my sergeant and the officer are done clearing the house.
In layman's terms, exigent circumstances means a pressing need. In this case, the pressing need was that officers thought that another injured and possibly malnourished child was inside Jodi's home. And sure enough, officers discovered Ruby's 10-year-old daughter sitting cross-legged in a walk-in closet just before noon. The girl was wearing jeans and a pink shirt, and like her brother, she was tense and uncommunicative.
Is this just you in here? I'm Sergeant Tobler. What's your name? I just have one. Where's your sister at?
Contact one.
You okay? Huh? You doing okay? You don't want to talk to me? Yeah, that's okay. Can you come with me though? We got Jodi out here. You know Jodi? She's outside with us. You take your time, bud. I'm in no hurry. I'm a police officer. Did you know that? I don't mean to hurt you at all. You're okay. Do you need help?
The officer told her that he was there to help and he would not hurt her, but his reassuring words didn't help. As is often the case with abused children, she may have thought the abuse was somehow her fault. In addition, she may have been worried about what would happen if she cooperated and was ultimately reunited with her abuser. Needless to say, encounters like this can be unimaginably stressful for traumatized children. Eventually, another officer showed up with a pizza and a drink, and despite what may have been gnawing hunger, the girl immediately didn't take the food. But later, she did take a few tentative bites after an officer assured her that the food was for her. When she finished eating, 2 female EMTs tried to coax her out of the closet. One told her that they had just helped her brother and that they wanted to do the same for her. Eventually, the girl rose and walked out of the closet with them. This was approximately 4 hours after she was found. When she was finally outside and away from the girl, one female EMT is seen wiping tears from her eyes, and shortly thereafter, Ruby shows up at Jodi's home.
We need to search your
person to make sure you don't have anything on you. Is there anything you have on you? Okay, I'm going to search you before we put you in his car. That's just protocol, so I'm just going to have you step right over here and then just widen your legs, widen your stance. Yep, perfect. Are you wearing a bra? Okay, I'm just going to go like this through and make sure you don't have anything.
Later that day, the 2 additional Franke children were removed from the family home by the Utah Division of Child and Family Services. Ruby and Jodi were eventually taken to the police station in Ivins, Utah, and interviewed because at that point it wasn't clear who abused the children or why they were at Jodi's house in the first place. Meanwhile, officers searched Jodi's expensive home and made a number of surprising discoveries, one of which was a vault-like concrete room in the basement equipped with a sink, a toilet, and a pull-out bed. Additional items like rope, duct tape, handcuffs, and a container full of what appeared to be honey and cayenne pepper were found, all of which seemed to corroborate the boys' story. Officers also confiscated a number of laptops and cell phones, but the most damning piece of evidence was Ruby's 60-page handwritten journal that detailed many of the shocking offenses that she and Jodi had committed against the Franke children over the years. For example, they forced them to sleep outside, carry heavy objects, sit motionless on the floor for hours on end, and on one occasion, one Franke girl was led into the desert during the summer to perform heavy manual labor in her bare feet. During the ordeal, Ruby documented how she cried out for food, water, and relief from the overbearing heat. Ruby described the outpouring of emotion as a manipulative ploy. On another occasion, Ruby and Jodi forced the children to carry heavy boxes up and down the stairs repeatedly until their legs gave out. When the 9-year-old girl finally collapsed of sheer exhaustion, they punished her by shaving her head. Other abuses included kicking the children while wearing heavy boots, covering their noses and mouths to restrict airflow, and depriving them of food and water. Unsurprisingly, one journal entry stated that Ruby's 12-year-old son ran away that summer, but that she and Jodi tracked him down and brought him back home within a few hours. Throughout the journal, Ruby described her children as being possessed, selfish, and sinful. There were also multiple references to God and Satan. Meanwhile, back at the police station, Ruby and Jodi were separated and taken into different interrogation rooms. In one, Ruby sat across from Detective Jessica Bate and Sergeant Nick Tobler, who told her they wanted to talk to her about the children. But as she had done before, Ruby remained stoic and uncommunicative.
We're just here to talk to you about kind of a few things involving your kids. So first, do you live down here or do you live up north? Do you want to talk to me about where you live or how many kids you have? So we just spoke with your husband and he said you guys have 6 kids. Are those all together? Are those all your kids? I can wait all day, so it's up to you if you want to talk to us about what's going on. Would you feel more comfortable talking to one of us?
Or do you want me to, I can step out if you want?
Or if you feel more comfortable talking to him, I can step out.
I'll wait till I have a lawyer.
Okay. So you don't want to talk to us at all? Do you want to answer that? Or you don't want to talk to us about anything?
So, yeah, this is just your chance to tell us. We're just trying to get your side of the story. So it's your chance to do that, but it's up to you. We're just here to talk. And I mean, I'm not asking any criminal questions. If you don't want to talk to us, just let us know and we'll be done.
I've already told you.
That you want a lawyer? Okay.
Detective Bate and Sergeant Tobler tried to convince her that she didn't need an attorney, but they eventually left 3 minutes after the interview began when it became apparent that they weren't going to get anything out of her. At the time, Jodi was in another interrogation room just a stone's throw away.
We just want to get to know you a little, so if you just kind of want to share a little about yourself and what brought you down here. And
So I trust my attorney. He said, don't say anything. And I said, I have nothing to hide. And he's like, I know that, but just let me be there with you when you talk. So you guys seem nice people.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to hide anything. I'm not trying to be difficult. This is really, if you knew all the pieces, I think you'd have a lot of empathy for what's going on.
That's really what
we're looking for. And you're an adult, and the thing about our interview, if we ask you any questions that you don't want to answer, you can just tell us, I don't want to answer that question. But we do want to have a basis and an understanding of what's going on in that home, or what went on up north that brought them into your home. And so if you want to share any of that and you don't want to answer any other questions, that's okay.
I'd like to just tell you, but I don't know who you are. I don't know if you're going to flip my words. I don't know.
And that's the good thing about cameras. Everything, it's pretty much double recorded, audio, video, and it's for the safety for you and for us, because we don't want to flip your words. And this will all be pretty much right there to support you. So we're not going to use anything against you.
My attorney be so insistent then. He's an honest, good man, goes to church. I trust him. Why would he say that to me then?
I don't know.
In the beginning, she was far more talkative than Ruby had been. At one point, she actually told the officers that she wanted to talk because she had nothing to hide. Even so, Jodi ultimately stopped talking, and her interrogation only lasted about 7 minutes. Then, just a few minutes after 9:30 p.m. on August the 30th, Ruby and Jodi were arrested and charged with 2 counts of aggravated child abuse. Before being booked into the county jail, they were informed of the charges and how they stemmed from the children's malnourishment. Eventually, Kevin showed up at the police station voluntarily. Later, it came out that Ruby had called and told him what was going on while she was on her way to Jodi's house.
So are they all living with you, or?
No, I haven't seen them for over a year.
Any of them?
No, none of them.
For a year.
I thought I was just coming here to pick up my kids, and for what, I don't know what or why.
Ruby's oldest and then estranged daughter Sherry was thrilled when she found out that 4 of her siblings had been rescued and that her mother and Jodi Hildebrandt had been arrested. Sadly, she claimed that she and a few members of her extended family had raised alarm bells with the Utah Division of Child and Family Services multiple times over the years. Ruby and Jodi remained in custody in the Purgatory Correctional Facility in Washington County, Utah, in the months leading up to their trials. However, they were placed in different cells and did not have any contact with one another. During Ruby's stay, a woman named Deborah Monson shared a cell with her for 3 nights. Afterwards, she told Business Insider that Ruby seemed unnaturally preoccupied with Jodi. According to Miss Monson, Ruby was distraught and depressed, and she couldn't understand why she and Jodi had to be separated. But surprisingly, she apparently made little or no mention of her children. While in jail, Ruby was allowed to use a phone to communicate with her lawyer and her husband, but as is often the case, her calls were recorded. In one, she talked to an unidentified man who was probably her husband Kevin. During the 6-minute call, Ruby references a number of Bible verses that relate to being persecuted and setting a good example for other people of faith. The man doesn't say much during the conversation, but Ruby chuckled near the end of the call and told him that there was no better way to set a good example than by going to jail unjustly. In other words, she still clung on to the notion that she hadn't done anything wrong. In fact, both she and Jodi apparently believed that the abuse was necessary in their quest to cast evil spirits out of the children and to help them atone for their sins. Due to attorney-client confidentiality, we will probably never know what transpired between Ruby and her lawyer before the trial got underway. However, it was clear early on that the cards were stacked against them. Ruby and Jodi were ultimately charged with 4 counts of felony second-degree aggravated child abuse for mistreating and starving 2 of the Franke children who were found in Jodi's home, and 2 others who were taken into custody later that day. Before the trial began, Washington County Prosecutor Eric Clark said the abuse was a clear case of religious extremism gone horribly wrong. Then, in December of 2023, Ruby entered a courtroom shackled and wearing a white and gray striped prison outfit. By then, she had been in custody for more than 2 months, and in a surprising about-face, she pled guilty to each of the 4 charges. She even said that she felt sorry for what she did. During the trial, Ruby methodically described the abuses she and Jodi had committed against the children, and much of her testimony was poignant, emotional, heartbreaking, and downright hard to stomach for some of those in the courtroom. At the end of the proceedings, Judge John J. Walton adjourned the court and scheduled sentencing for February 20th of 2024. Afterward, Ruby's attorney, Lamar Winward, released a statement in which he said his client was heavily influenced by Jodi Hildebrandt, who went out of her way to isolate her from her husband, older children, friends, and extended family members. The statement also claimed that Ruby's unhealthy association with Jodi gave her a distorted sense of reality, and that she was still a devoted mother who'd used her time in jail constructively to reset her moral compass. In the end, Jodi and Ruby received 4 1 to 15-year prison sentences that were to be served consecutively. However, the maximum prison term for consecutive sentences is limited to 30 years by Utah state law, so this is the most time they will serve unless other charges are added later. Now, Ruby and Jodi are both serving their terms at the Utah State Correctional Facility in Salt Lake City. Kevin Franke has always claimed that Jodi Hildebrandt brainwashed his wife and contributed to the downfall of his marriage to Ruby. The Franke's minor children are still in state custody, but Kevin and his attorneys are doing everything they can to get them back. It is still unclear how things will play out, but the state is scheduled to make a final decision on custody at some time in the fall of 2024. If you found this case compelling, don't forget to like the video, comment down below your take on it, and please subscribe to the channel. Also hit the notification bell in order to stay up to date each time we reveal a new shocking case. Until next time, stay safe and keep your eyes peeled. You never know what's lurking in the shadows.